all, can I say a huge thank you to all of you who have taken the time to watch, like, comment and newly subscribed to my channel. It is wonderful. It makes me feel so very humble that you have taken the time to watch what I've put out on YouTube. And if this is your first time watching me, I hope you like what you see and consider subscribing. That would make me feel even more wonderful. So today, I am going to take part in the This Way or That Way challenge. Now, before we start, I am a little bunged up, so I'm going to have to keep stopping and having a drink. I don't know why I'm bunged up. I haven't got a cold, I haven't got hay fever. I have got asthma and I'm still waiting for that hospital appointment. It'll come eventually. So, this way or that way, how did we get to this? Now, the lovely Helen from Helen's Closet and Caroline from Blackbird Fabrics have a podcast. It is called the Love to Sew Podcast, and I, for one, am a fan of the Love to Sew Podcast. It's wonderful to listen to when dog walking. I need a good 7 podcasts that come out every week that are about an hour long that take me for a dog walk. So that's 1 podcast a day. Perfect. But this particular podcast is really interesting, and it led Julie from the Curated Curvy to take it one stage further and turn it into a little Instagram hashtag. So Julie from the Curated Curvy has actually tagged people in it to challenge them to do the same vlog. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to follow Ruan's lead, and I'm not going to tag anybody, because if you want to do it, you'll do it. It's such good fun. I have seen quite a few of these vlogs. I've seen the one by Tiffany from Hoosier Handmade. I've seen one from Theresa from Lost My Thread. And when I actually put up this or that into YouTube, there were loads! That's going to keep me busy for the next few days. This Way or That Way is split into 4 sections. You have sewing prep, you have fabric, you have clothing construction, and you have sewing habits. And I've got a few more questions to add on the end, which could be quite interesting. Now, sewing prep. Numbers 2 and 3 sort of link together, and I'll come to those in a minute. So the first one, shop my stash or shopping new. I love going to the shops and buying new fabric for a project, but I also know that I have a stash full of fabric that will give me the fabric I need to make the projects I want to make, certainly for the next few months. If I'm being honest, I think I've probably got enough fabric to keep me going for a year or more. I don't have a very big stash, and my stash is away, it's in cupboards. If I can't get it in the cupboards, I won't buy any more. It makes me go sort of all hot and bothered. I know I bought fabric in America, but I bought fabric I knew that I wanted and that I needed. And that last bit from Joann's was something that I needed because it was a fabric I've been looking for. Number 2, PDF or paper. I like both. If I'm given and gifted a pattern and it's on tracing paper, I'll love it. If I'm given a pattern and sent it by a company on a PDF, I'll love it. If I'm in a shop and I see the pattern, I'll just buy it. If I'm online, I will probably click PDF rather than buy the paper copy, because if it's PDF, I can put it together quickly and it's done. But it leads on to the next one, and this will tell you why I like to do things a certain way. Cutting or tracing, I'm a tracer. Absolutely a tracer, unless I printed it out as a PDF, in which case I'll cut it. So there you go, that's the first 3 questions, and I'm on the shelf. Number 4, toile, brackets muslin, or go for it. Technically, you should toile everything. Do I toile everything? No. Do I just go for it? Yes. But I have changed shape. That's code for I've put a bit of weight on. So if I'm making something, I am tending to toile the area that needs toiling. So if, for instance, that I'm doing something around my middle, because I do have a tendency to put weight on in the diaphragm area. It's a long story as to why, but I do tend to have a chunky diaphragm. I will absolutely, I'll either measure and measure and measure, and if necessary, I will literally cut the chest bit out in some scrap fabric. I've got a scrap bin and I use my scrap fabric. So if I'm making in viscose, I'll go to my scraps, pick out a bit of viscose. I've even been known to tack the fabric together and make one big flat piece and then cut the piece of pattern out on it. I hope you can follow that. If you want me to show you how I do that, put a comment below and I will do it in a future vlog. But it's just a way of using up the scraps. I don't use little tiny scraps. I don't create a piece of crazy patchwork. If I was making something really precious, it would be toile. Absolutely no doubt about it. So that's the first ones. And on that, you know, that's 4 questions and I'm sitting on the shelfer, 50-50. I do it both ways. There isn't a right or wrong way for this, folks. It's the way that suits you. The next one is, here we go again, fabric. In store or online, I don't mind. If I need fabric, desperately, I'll go online. If I'm wandering around town and I see some fabric and think, ooh, I might like that, then I'll go into the shop. Very rarely do I actually go to the shops to buy fabric because in York, there isn't really anywhere. If I just want something cheap and cheerful, I'll probably nip to Boys. If I want something patchworky, I'll nip to Bugweeds. If I want anything else, then I will tend to go online rather than going to one of the either other fabric shops we do have in York. Unless I'm in York and wandering around, and then I'll go in and have a wander. With haberdashery, if I can, I'm an in-store in Duttons for Buttons. And I was going to say end of. That's for you, Lorianne. End of. I'll go to Duttons for Buttons. They have everything. Knit or woven. Now, when I started to sew, back in the 60s, knit was something that was just talked about. And you didn't really bother with it on your sewing machine unless you were very lucky enough to have one of these newfangled overlockery things. We didn't have one. Mum had the old Jones straight stitcher. And that's what I used. Jersey fabrics were, we didn't really buy jersey fabrics, it was woven, woven, woven. And as my sewing has progressed, I've learnt to sew with jerseys, I've learnt to sew with lycra, learnt to sew with the overlocker. And I think the first time I met the overlocker was when I was doing my City and Guilds. Anyway, I'm digressing here. So knit or woven? I'm going to sit on the shelf because I like them both. It depends what I'm making, and I can have as much joy making a project in knit as I can in woven. And sometimes I want a complicated project in knit to push myself, which is why I'm doing swimwear. Because it's something new to me. I've never done it before until this summer. I've had some fantastic help, and I won't go on about swimwear anymore now. Now, washing your fabric. Tumble dry or peg out, that is easy. I don't have a tumble dryer, so it's pegged out or hung out. That's it. Number 4, this is a good one. Rotary cutter or scissor. Now, I was taught scissors because in the day we didn't have rotary cutters. In the 80s when I met rotary cutters for the first time, I thought, oh, I do like these, and then thought, oh, it could cut my finger and I don't really like it. So I tended to shy away from them until of late. And when I was at Lorianne's, she cuts out with a rotary cutter, but she has a great big area with a mat on it. Now, I don't have an area with a mat on it. I just have a very small area. I was lucky enough to go to Rachel's last week. We had a sewing day together, and I cut out another item of swimwear. Oh my gosh. It was wonderful. Now, when I was in the States, the one thing I didn't show you that I bought. Let me show you my rotary cutters. This is the little one that I bought. I bought this in Hobby Lobby in the States. It is by Fiskars. Other manufacturers are available. It is a 28mm rotary cutter, and they say it's for curves and patterns, and it is fantastic. So when I cut my swimsuit out at Rachel's, I was able to do this, use this through the curves. In fact, I cut the whole outfit out using that. Initially, I had this rotary cutter. As you can see, it doesn't have a blade. It's by Alpha. And this is the one that I had for patchworking. And it sort of, the blade goes in and out like this. it's too easy to get your finger. I know it's got there, but I was just, sorry, it's flashing around. Don't like it. And then, Ulfa, I saw this one. Now, I have to say, I copied Rachel. Rachel has this one and it's great. So you press the red button, the blade comes down, you've got all this protection around here, so your finger's going to flip into that. And then when you're finished, you press the button again from the other side and it doesn't come through. But I do like scissors, and I was taught to use scissors. But the scissors that you use for sewing are really big shears. Look at this, I can't even find a pair of shears at the moment because they're buried somewhere in the sewing room. But really big dressmaker's shears are heavy, and as I am getting older I can understand why people are using rotary cutters. But at the moment I'm not blessed to have a board in my house. So I've got a birthday coming up and the children have already been forewarned. And I think they have accepted it. And I'm just going to say thank you so much to Ruan, because when I was at Rachel's, we were talking about boards and she said text Ruan. I text Ruan and she couldn't have been more helpful. So thank you so much, my lovely. I appreciate it, and the children have accepted. Yes. So number 3 for your subsection is clothing construction. Follow the pattern or wing it. I follow the pattern. I might not follow it in order, and I might change the way things are done simply through the training that I've had. I quite frequently do change the way things are done. I will read the pattern, see what they want you to do, and then I'll alter it to work for me. So I am a follower of the pattern. I don't wing it. Bias or facing, I'm a facing person. I'm also not an understitch person. I don't understitch, and I certainly do not like stitching in the ditch. Serge or French seam? I'm a French seamer. I am making the Austin dress at the moment by Grainline Patterns. Grainline Studio? Grainline Patterns. One or the other. I'm making the Austin dress. I've French seamed everything. I've even put the bodice on the skirt and French seamed it, and I feel very proud of myself. I have recently perfected French seaming sleeves in, which is fantastic. It gives them such the most beautiful finish. Button fly or zip fly? Zip every time. I just don't want the chunkiness of the buttons. Do I want to sew buttons in? I'm looking down here because I've got something here. Do I sew buttons in by hand or by machine? Now, when I got my little Elna, I got some feet with it. They're stuck on a magnet here so I don't lose them. And I read that I could get a button sewing on foot. It was in the extra accessories bit at the back of the handbook. So my father, for my birthday one year, bought me this. It cost us £34. We got that in about 1981. It's the button sewing on foot. So I'm over 40 years now sewing buttons on by machine. There is a technique. Don't follow the guidelines on your machine. If you don't have a button sewing on foot and you have an open foot, you can use that. Also, you can take your foot off to sew your buttons on, but you've got to probably hold it in place with a tweezer. It's no length, about 4mm width. You need to measure the distance between the holes on the button. And I turn the balance wheel to make certain that the needle's going down in the right place. That way you don't break your needles and you don't break your buttons. But if you want to sew on by machine, I would recommend, and you've not done it before, get yourself a couple of extra buttons. That's just me. Interfacing. Do I use sew in or iron on? If I can get away without using it, I will not use the stuff because I don't like it. And I was delighted when I heard Ruan say she doesn't like cheap ironing, violin, interfacing, violin, whatever you want to call it. We used to call it violin when I was younger, not interfacing, violin. And you can get bobbles on it. Now, the G700 is lightweight. It's by Visaline, or it's SF101 by Pelham. It's a fabric-based interfacing. and it's an iron-in, and it's really lightweight. So what I used on the tree skirt and what you use for machine embroidery, it's lovely stuff. I'm going to sit on the shelf because I have used sewn-in. Use that a lot on coat making. You can use it on dressmaking, because if you want something with extra added weight and you're frightened of getting those bobbles, go for a sew-in. I'm sitting on the shelf because I'm probably a use or not use. I'm on the shelf. Snip as you go or snip at the end. I usually try to snip as I go, but I have been known to snip everything at the end. And Lorianne, please don't mention that you found dangling threads. So it depends how busy I am. Sometimes I will snip at the end. Certainly with the overlocker, it does snip a lot of the ends off for you. But going through the sewing machine, my machine doesn't leave ends to snip. Next one, press as you go or all at once. I'm a press as you go girl. Definitely a press as you go. Next section, sewing habits. Day or night? I think I'm probably more of a nighttime sewer. If I sit down in the day to sew because I'm widowed, I think I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do the other. So I tend to think I can go in the garden in the daytime, but I can't go in at night. I have to walk the dogs in the day, I can't really walk them at night. So sewing tends to be an evening habit for me. Slow and steady or frantic? I'm slow and steady. Just like Ruan said, I've been to Rachel's and she's so like focused, and it's like, I can do this, I can do that, I can do the other, and she's done. And I'm thinking, this needs to go there, this needs to go. I'm really slow and steady. The next one is tidy as you go or all at once. I'm a tidy as you go. Every night when I have finished sewing, I tidy the sewing room. So when I come down the following day, it's all there ready for me. And I leave it all set up, so I've got the garment that I'm making and I've got the instructions, I've got any tools I need. I put them away, but they're at the front of the box, I can pull them out quickly. So there you go. Those are the questions. Now, I thought it'd be quite nice to add a couple more in. In fact, I've got 3. The first one is, do you tack or do you pin? Now, I love to tack or baste. I love to tack, and I will tack. Set-in sleeves have to be tacked in. In fact, I'd tack in any sleeve. I would tack a collar on, a neck facing on. I would tack a cuff on, and I would tack a zip in. Which leads me to my next point is zips. Do you close the seam or do you work with an open seam? I close the seam and tack my zips in. I don't work with an open seam. There's this new way of... The reason I don't do it is that with zips I've had so many failures in my earlier days of sewing where the seams have come out, whereas if you close your seam and you get everything matched all the way down, it's going to work with your zip. And there's different ways of putting zips in. And some you have to close the seam and some you don't have to close the seam. I'm going to put a link to my zip vlog in the description box below. And the last one is, how often do you clean your machine? Do you clean it after a project or once in a blue moon? I have to say I clean mine after each project so that it's fresh and ready to go. So if it needs oiling or it needs a new needle, I check the thread cutter, I check for fluff. I do it on every machine. I do it on my overlocker, I do it on both of my Beninas and my little Elna and my cover stitcher. I clean all the lint out after every project. So there you go. Whew, I don't even know how long I've talked to it for because I've got my laptop here with all the questions and the notes. I can't even see what I'm looking like. Let's have a look and see how long I've talked for. Well, that's not too bad. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed listening to how I do various sewing tasks. But please remember, there's only one right way, and that's the way that it works for you. Not for me, but for you. And that's what makes us all so different. And it's lovely listening and hearing the way that people do things because you think, oh, somebody else does something the same way as me. That's wonderful. And that's how I've responded to it. That's what went through my mind. Not like, oh, I'd never do it like that. Oh, it's not my way. Yeah, that's why I've mentioned the zips. I tack my zips. Somebody out there might think, oh, I always tuck my zips and nobody else ever says they tuck their zips. I do. I like tacking. But there again, I like hand sewing. Now, before I say goodbye, I wanted to let you know that I have been sewing. And I've been sewing my swimming costume, but I made it up at Rachel's last week. And I was trying to do something in particular. And what I wanted to do was to see if I could do it and turn it through. Now, I'm well on the way. But this is not going to be the one for the sew-along. If I'm going to do a sew-along, I've got to make one. So here it is in bits. You can see all the bits of swimming costume. I want you to know I'm on with it. But Rachel and I were sat there and we were talking about it. And we had great lengthy discussions over it. And I'd actually sewed it up too much and I had to undo it. So it's a question of then I realised I'd missed something out. So I've undone it a bit further to put that one bit in. And hopefully tonight or tomorrow I might get onto the overlocker. I am sewing. I've got a lot of unpicking to do with the butterfly dress because I'm just not happy with how it is. I'd understitched and I just hate understitching, so I'm going to do it by hand. And also the other thing is my hands are getting a little bit arthritic, so if I do more hand stitching I tend to think in the opposites if I can. So my hands are aching a little bit more and cramping a little bit more, but I'm 62 in October. I am getting older, but if I make my hands work, hopefully they'll work for longer. That's the way I'm thinking. It's sort of like reverse. So that's what I'm doing there, and I am sewing. But since I've come back from Oregon, I've had so many lovely things to do. I've seen people, I've done things. I've spent a lot of time up at Castle Howard, but also I spent a long time in my garden walking the dogs because I needed to spend time with them. And today I am going to finish editing this vlog before I creep upstairs and do some housework. I hate housework. I think I could write a guidebook on how to get out of cleaning windows because it is literally the most boring job in the world. So on that note, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to put all my bits and pieces away. I love this. Put all my bits and pieces away. If you liked what you've seen, do give me a thumbs up. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. I'd love to have you on board this journey. And send me a comment, and thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.